Adult content photographers, what was the most awkward moment you had? What do you feel when you film? How is your job generally? Story 1. I do BDIR photography as a side hustle, and you'd be amazed at how quickly tasteful it can turn into tacky or downright runchy and awkward. There's a ton of that just by virtue of the work, but here are my top 3 examples. A bride decided to do a photo shoot for her groom. She comes in with an assortment of outfits that are progressively provocative. And one of them is the classic white bridal lingerie getup, which we decided to save for last the shoot is going well. The bride isn't nervous and is actually pretty fun and chill. She poses in some cool looks, like a central baseball jersey to represent their team in a dorky Alp outfit, a la Lord of the Rings. We get to the end of the shoot, and it's time for the super seductive wedding night. Look, the bride touches up her makeup, and she's looking hot. I send her off to get changed because the outfit consists of stockings, gars, and a corset, and I want her to have enough time for a good assortment of posing options. As I'm making a few adjustments to the lighting, I hear a scream from the back. I wrested the dressing area and call the bride's name. I find her half-dressed and sobbing, clutching her chest. I look a little closer, and there's on her hand in her chest. I ask her what happened, but she's too upset to speak. I ask if she can show me, so she moves her hand, and then I scream. It turns out she didn't know what the Gera clip was for, and mook it for some type of clamp. She ended up needing stitches. A few weeks later, we were able to rush an appointment for her to finish the shoot in time for her wedding, but she decided to leave the stockings and their accoutrements behind for the final go number 2. Another good one was when a young woman treated herself to a photo shoot for her 21st birthday. She said it was all about giving herself a confidence boost, but had a hard time believing it, because she was definitely the conventionally gorgeous type. I asked her about it, and she was very candid. She explained that while she was physically attractive and in great shape for some reason, whenever a relationship started to get serious, the person would just ghost her for the life of me. I couldn't figure out what that would be, so I told her as much. She got changed and we got started. Things were going smoothly, and she was having a good time. She was an absolute knockout. And the natural at posing, we really enjoyed ourselves talking throughout the process and getting to know one another. The time came for some more close-up shots. So I talked through what that could look like and let her decide how she wanted to stage them and whether she wanted to be fully bare or partially bare. She decided on being fully bare and went to the dressing area to get herself situated. She comes back and I start with some full body shots and move a bit closer every few shots. I get to be about a foot away from her, and I'm hit with the most intense smell. I know that it can't possibly be coming from anywhere. But her body get a little closer to confirming suspicions. And yep, it's definitely coming from her lady bits. I figure there has to be something going on with this girl's health or hygiene. Decide to bite the bullet and talk to her about it. I don't beat around the bush. I just say, "Hey lady, I have to be honest with you. There's a bit of a smell down there." She doesn't even look surprised, and she looks at me like I have 3 heads and tells me of course there is. I keep my flower wild. We get to talking about it in depth, and I learned that not only does she not groom down there, she also doesn't wash it. Her mother warned her against using feminine cleaning products, and she took that to mean all cleaning products. Fam. I gave her a clothed demonstration of how I wash myself, handed her a bar of soap, and let her use the shower in my attached apartment to remedy that situation. Immediately, she came back with a smile on her face and a song in her heart, and we finished the shoot without incident. That could have gone a whole different way, but to this day she tells me I changed her life number 3. I saved this one for last, because it was the most awkward for me. I don't often shoot couples for various reasons. However, a really good friend of mine asked very nicely, and I always had a little crush on her, so I said yes. I was confused though, because I never met her partner, and was kind of surprised to hear she was dating someone, and it was serious enough for an intimate photo shoot. She admitted it was new, but she was just so into him that she had to go for it. We set the date and talked about logistics, and all seemed fine. The day of the shoot comes around, and I'm nervous. I hate couple shoots, y'all. They arrive and we do introductions. Something about the boyfriend seems familiar, but also kind of off. But I just roll with things. They change clothes, and we start off as some cheesy look into our eye stuff, to ESA. Into the more daring stuff, we get into a rhythm, and things are actually not terrible, so we take a break to get ready for the next set of shots. This is where it gets awkward. The boyfriend comes out first, and he just kind of stares at me. He starts talking, and tries to pull the whole "you're too pretty to be behind the camera" thing, and I'm like, dude, chill. And he looks at me with a weirdly intense expression, and asks, "Do you remember me too? which the only answer, dear reader, was no, my friend. His girlfriend returns and I can't wait to get started, so we can be finished. As soon as they remove their robes, it gets really awkward. I notice the boyfriend has a small tattoo on his left hip, depicting a sort of hipster aero adventure situation that looked familiar, friends. But then I look over at his right hip and see a tattoo of similar size with my, and rather uncommon name. That's when I remembered the guy I went on 3 dates with him over the course of 2 weeks, and then broke it off with him because he had some serious red flags. My friend notices my face and is like, oh yeah, the tattoo, that hiss one that got away from a while back. Weird that you have the same name though. I look at her and I know I can't lie, so I flat out say, I think that's my name, her boyfriend. Then starts crying and coming toward us, both calling out, not for his current girlfriend of nearly 6 months, but for me. I get out of there and let them talk. He gets awfully quiet, so I head back in to check on things, only to find my friend is nowhere to be found, and her boyfriend, ex-boyfriend, is quietly sobbing in the middle of the studio. Studio floor. I just left him there and sent my guy friend to get him out of there for me, while I checked on the girlfriend. She broke up with him on the spot and left. Because she couldn't face me, she made sure he still paid me though, and promised to never ask me to do a couple shoot again. I did eventually do a solo shoot with her, but that's a tale for another thread entirely. Wink dang. That's a whole bunch of weird, would you guys know where they offer photography? I want that lady's job? Wait a minute. I almost forgot to mention, this video is sponsored by Rufus Rug r/Rufus. Who just said that, me Rufus, but I'm Rufus. Well, that's kind of strange because I'm also Rufus, but just not from your universe. There's a Rufus multiverse. Yep, there is. And in my universe, we have r/Rufus. What's r/Rufus? Well, okay, picture this. It's like hearing longer, more detailed stories. Without any annoying dolphin noises because dolphins don't exist in my universe. On r/Rufus, I dive deep into various threads like am I the a-hole entitled Parents and Pro Revenge? Let's goes on, plus I can share more of my opinions in detail too, which might get me in hot water in some dimensions, but who cares, right? Click the link in the description to check out the channel. Quick question. Do you also have that, mole on the butt cheek? What? Well, what? You say something. I didn't say anything. Anyways, back to the stories. Story 2. I used to shoot adult material in college, and for a few years after I graduated college 2010 to 16-ish, I have a degree in photography and was a Boy Scout, and I'm very good at knots, so a friend got me into it and photographed them for her site. This led to me doing tons more work. The worst is feeder material. These poor women would just eat and eat on camera, and then throw up all over themselves. I was pretty rough stuff to photograph and film. Also, it would make me kind of sad, because these women would gain large amounts of weight quickly each time you'd work with them, and it just didn't seem healthy, as has been said already. The worst part is the smells were enough to make you gag. Sometimes, also if you want to make decent money, you have to do both gay and straight scenes, which as a straight male at first is really odd, but you get used to it shockingly quickly. The worst part is that you become kind of numb to it all. When you're behind the camera, you'll meet your model and she will be very attractive, but as soon as you're behind the camera, it becomes very much a job and you become focused on getting a good shot and getting the lighting correct. The awkwardness disappears so quickly. You sort of become numb to it all at the point in your personal life where it doesn't affect you. The same one of the most awkward things was when models would show up with their boyfriends who would just be really weird and awkward in the background. It would almost always be buff military or former military dudes, or want to be MMA fighter types. They'd stand across, armed off to the side, and be very encouraging to their partners while watching them. I personally just always found that odd. I understand they accompanied them, I guess to make them feel safe, but some of the weird things they'd say would always make you scratch your head. Never really got involved with the scenes other than those honestly sets were much more professional than I imagined when I was younger. Most of the girls were not like crazy girls who wanted to do it constantly. It was literally them, turning it on and off for the camera. I worked with a smaller budget company, so I never saw fluffers, and I honestly question if they really exist. It would be common to see the guys between shots to keep it up, which is sort of weird. You'd be talking to them about asserting a shot, and they'd just be touching it the whole time. Pay was pretty good, usually on set days. It was about $60 an hour paid out in 4 8-hour blocks. So even if you worked 6 hours, you get paid for 8, which was cool. You're an independent contractor. even if you tend to just work for one company mostly out of that world. Now, the occasional shooting for some girls who stayed in contact with to shoot for their off-pages. Story 3. I'm a photographer who has on a few occasions taken indecent photos, usually for friends who have off, but my story is from before I did so. A model reached out to me for a shoot. We chatted normally and talked out some minor details. Nothing explicit, just a bit half of B stuff. Mind you, I didn't know her at all. She was a random person who reached out on Instagram. She texts me and tells me that we're going to FaceTime at 12 a.m. I insist that we can talk tomorrow and that I'm already in bed, and she persists, saying that it's fine. I hate FaceTiming, especially with people. I don't know, especially at midnight when I'm already cozy in bed. She calls me and is in the middle of taking a West's and hammered. I was taken it back and told her we could just talk tomorrow. She gets upset and says that we need to talk now so she can show me her body and her tattoos. She says this as she's wiping up. I was super scared out and hung up. Needless to say, I did not feel comfortable doing a photo shoot with her, and I ghosted. That is why you don't do FaceTime with absolute strangers. You meet online. It might actually be cuckoo in real life. Story 4. When I was 22, I was asked by a friend of mine to record him and his wife. He said it didn't have to be weird because they weren't looking for a triad or anything like that. I agreed because it sounded interesting, but the things they did were extremely rough and unexpected. At one point, he started crying while she was doing something to his backside and asked if he was all right, which caused him to get angry and yell at me for interrupting them. I stayed quiet after that and kept recording while he was able to get back. In the mood after they were done, he left the room, and his wife asked me never to bring up crying to him because he was sensitive about it. I of course agreed, and she hugged me, then kissed me on the cheek, which I really didn't like because she was still bare and covered in sweat. Story 5. I'm a makeup artist. I'm there on set all the time, so I see it all. Nothing has really been awkward for me. I'm pretty laid back, and it all just seems pretty natural for me, just like people doing their jobs. I guess the most awkward moment is if I can tell the two actors don't have chemistry or they're not attracted to each other. I feel like it shows on film. That's the only moment I could describe as being awkward. Oh, actually, it was really awkward for me this one time filming a group. I went into a different room to clean my brushes, and one guy took a break to come and talk to me. He was standing there bare while asking about my job. I've seen literally everything, but it was pretty awkward for one guy leaving a room after a set to come and talk to me about nothing. Multiple times he was twice my age too. I asked him if he was probably needed in the set, and he agreed. Some people have mentioned fake stuff, and yeah, it is used sometimes. Usually they'll get the real shot and use the fake one to get a better angle if needed. If he was aiming for the chest and misses, we use the fake one to make it look hotter. I've been a spare set of hands and sets before. The job in general is awesome. I met some really cool people and made some awesome friends. I don't get turned on during filming before you ask, except maybe this one scene SC where it was one girl and two really attractive guys that were also both bi and all really enjoying themselves. It is pretty hot when I can tell the actors are super into it, enjoying themselves. I've had to put makeup and bums that were covered and bruising from shoots they'd had before. Most things aren't awkward. Honestly, they're all just human bodies and things happen. I guess most people who would find bodies awkward wouldn't be working in the industry. This lady's self-control is so impressive. Even. Temptation throws in the towel. If you're ready to outsmart your cravings and leave them scratching their heads in envy, it's high time. You joined a button-pressing party by hitting that like button and subscribing. Trust me, your impulses will be begging for mercy. Story 6. I'm a photographer who shoots a lot of bare art, and my models range from first-time models, so only shoot full. Clothed to people who shoot bare. Before I ever shoot, I give the model a safety talk, in which I say that I won't touch them, that I'll show them every shot I take, and that if anything is making them uncomfortable, I want them to speak up. I once had a model interrupt that and said my job is mainly shooting wild stuff. There's nothing that you're going to say or do that will make me uncomfortable. That felt awkward to me. Thought about it for a second and told her that I did not care what she did. At other times, I was going to treat her like I treated every other model. And then I went on with my model safety talk. I have to admit that I'm always a bit nervous working with a model who's new to me. Her saying that actually made me relax a bit during the shoot. Story 7. Back when I was a broke out of work photojournalist, I would take all sorts of photo gigs to make ends meet, including some adult content. After one of the jobs, the client, her makeup girl, and I went to a diner to go over the photos and decide which ones I would touch up. She'd been fasting to look skinnier for the shoot, so she wasn't too picky about where we stopped. When we got there, she practically ran to the corner booth before ordering a huge burger. There were well over 1,000 shots, so going through them took a while. Surprisingly, our reader was incredibly attentive the entire time, despite us sitting there well after the food had been finished. I don't think our waters or coffees were even less than half full, and he kept reassuring us that we could stay as long as we needed. It was almost annoying how he kept checking on us every few minutes. Once we had narrowed it down to a couple of dozen photos to be touched up, we paid the tab and got up to leave. That's when I noticed the giant mirror right behind the booth. Every time the waiter came over, he got an explicit aisle of the woman sitting next to me on my laptop screen. Thankfully, the model wasn't exactly bashful about her body and found it hilarious. And that is why you really can't trust people who are overly nice. That server would probably get Best Employee of the Month for his dedicated work that night, with a side of feast for his eyes.